too many New Yorkers, and Americans for that matter, are working 8 hours and then still feeling like they haven't made enough money to keep living in the city they call home. And ultimately, what I'm focused on is making the city affordable for everyone.
In our politics lead today, that's Zohran Mamdani, the likely Democratic nominee for the New York City mayor's race, on why he got into the race. But after his stunning results earlier this week over former New York Governor Andrew Cuomo in the Democratic primary, Mamdani will likely face the current mayor, Eric Adams, who's now running as an independent. Let's bring in Mayor Adams. Mayor Adams, welcome back to the lead. So you're seeking a second term of mayor of New York. In March, a Quinnipiac poll found only 20% of registered voters in your city approved of your job, 67% disapproved. Now, that was taken at a time when you were still facing federal corruption charges that have since been dropped with prejudice. What is your message to New York voters and why you think you deserve another term?
Well, I think look at the numbers. When you allow New Yorkers to hear the real story of the success and the turnaround, developing more jobs in our individual senior years in the history of the city. In 3.5 years, we have ensured that we develop housing that's needed more than the previous two mayors combined. And then when you look at the small business operating, the safety of the city, I ran on a public safety platform and we delivered on that. The last 6 months, we had the lowest number of shootings and homicide in recorded history of this city. I am going to be able to tell the real story of how we turned the city around.
Yeah, I want to talk about affordability in a second, but just to talk about this issue, obviously a lot of people wonder about. A lot of voters in New York have the impression that you entered into some sort of private deal with President Trump. His Justice Department would drop the charges against you, and then you would be helpful to him in other ways, including with immigration. What do you say to voters who look at the whole thing that went on, both with the allegations against you in the criminal complaint and then the deal with President Trump, and think, the whole thing just stinks? What do you say to them?
Yeah, well, first, I'm out in the streets every day talking to voters at community centers, town halls, schools, and the top issue that they're talking about is public safety affordability. I have yet to hear them look at what we continue to consider a bogus charges. When you think about someone was indicted for calling one of the city agencies to do their job, that is just the reality of it. And you know what many people don't know? I never met the president prior to him running for office. Never met him in my life. He talked about the unfairness of the charges while he was on the campaign trail. And the first time we met, he also articulated the unfairness. And the Justice Department used the same system that determines if someone should be indicted. They used that system to determine that I should not have been indicted, and the charges was dropped with prejudice. And so my goal is to really communicate with our voters and show the success of turning around the city from a city that inherited COVID, public safety issues, unemployment issues. We have been successful, and we put $30 billion back into the pockets of working class people.
Well, a lot of people in the Justice Department resigned because they didn't like the deal, but we can move on. What is your response to the possibility that you might be facing former Governor Andrew Cuomo in November? He conceded defeat in the Democratic primary, but he's staying on the ballot on what's called the fight and deliver ballot line.
Well, it's clear that the process is going to play out. I always state I don't focus on what other candidates are doing. I focus on what I am doing. I came from behind when I ran in 2021. I had a 13-point deficit from the leading opponent in the race. And as you see, we were successful. I know how to campaign. I know how to speak to voters. I'm a working class mayor. I'm a blue collar mayor, and I will resonate. The residents of this city, they see I'm one of them. My life came from living in poverty, went into law enforcement, had become a captain in the police department, a state senator, a borough president, and now the mayor. I know how to communicate to the voters and understand the success of this city.
So I want to turn to your likely Democratic challenger, Mamdani, because you said recently that the Jewish community in New York should be concerned about him. You've accused him of using anti-Semitic rhetoric. What specifically has Mamdani said that you think is anti-Semitic?
Pro-Hamas. Hamas is a dangerous terrorist organization that should be destroyed. When you embrace the philosophies of Hamas, not only what they do to their own people, but what they did in Gaza to lift them up and praise them, I think that's a clear indicator that something is wrong with that. But he has to
When did he praise Hamas? I don't recall him ever praising Hamas.
There's several videos, even during his days of being a rap artist, of praising Hamas and other terrorist groups. And so, a little research, you'll be able to find it. But I'm not competing against him only for what he's done and praising Hamas. I'm competing against him because this is not a socialist city, and that much of what he's promising to people, which I think is really deplorable, people that are struggling, like my family did, living without the means that we needed. When you promise them that you're going to give everything away free and you don't have the authority as the mayor to do so, he doesn't have the authority to raise income tax on the top 1% of New Yorkers. Assemblymen have that authority, and that's who he is. He couldn't do it in the assembly. How are you going to deliver it as the mayor of the city?
Well, he has. I mean, he obviously caught the imagination of a lot of Democratic voters. His victory was pretty handy. You're talking about rent freezes, which he does have the power to do, free bus service, universal child care, creating city-run grocery stores. Do you disagree with those programs, or just he doesn't have the authority to do it on his own?
Let's go back. You said rent freeze. He has the authority to do so. No, he does not. There's the independent rent guideline boards that independently make that decision. So he does not have the authority to do that. He had the authority to do free buses. I gave him a pilot project to do when he was in the assembly. He failed to carry out on it. 4 years in the assembly, he has not passed one bill. He's making promises to people who are really struggling that he can't deliver on. The foundation of all the things he wants to do for free is coming from an income tax increase on 1%. He does not have the authority as the mayor to do that. He has the authority as an assemblyman, and he did not accomplish everything he's talking about doing now. He could have done in the state, but he failed to do so.
All right, New York City Mayor Eric Adams, thank you. Please come back. It's going to be a long campaign. We want to be on top of it.
Yes.